Well, good morning, everybody. We'll call this meeting to order. As a reminder, this is an electronic meeting in accordance with Tennessee Governor Lee's Executive Order number 51, extending safe, open, and transparent public meetings by electronic means, while determinations for how to return to safe in-person meetings remain ongoing. Lindsay, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Okay, Hank Carr.
Present.
Shannon Castillo.
Here.
I don't see Tracy Johnson. Jody Jones.
Here.
Brent Long.
Here, and I know Tracy is coming.
Okay. Freddie Malone.
Here.
Lindsay Nichols.
Here.
Seth Thomas.
Here.
Robert Williams.
Here.
And Joe Wise.
Here. All right. Should have had the opportunity to review the January minutes. Does anyone have any corrections? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Rob.
All right, Lindsay, will you please do roll call?
Hank Carr.
Yes.
Shannon Castillo.
Yes.
Jody Jones.
Yes.
Brent Long.
Yes.
Freddie Malone.
Yes.
Aaron Murphy. Lindsay Nichols.
Yes.
William Roller. Seth Thomas.
Yes.
Robert Williams.
Yes.
Joe Wise.
Yes.
And Tracy Johnson. We just made a motion to approve January minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, before we move on to approval of financials, I'm just going to remind everybody we do have a meeting following this one, so I'm going to do our best to keep us on track to finish by 9. Next, we'll move on to the approval of financials. Jim, will you please present them?
Yes. Thank you, Brent. We are 7 months into our fiscal year, which is about 58% of the total budget. As you recall, we have split the JCDA and the Johnson Beer accounting. So we're going to present those separately. And should I go through both of those now, or? Okay, I'll do them both now. For the JCDA, if you look at the balance sheet that you have on the first page of the financial statement, total assets for JCDA are $2,532,684, with $2,074,282 in cash. Of the cash, $1,366,713 is in the TIF account. $312,204 is in the operating account. $193,657 is in the savings account, and $201,707 is in the downtown center TIF fund. I don't think that's the right. Well, I'll continue on. Still in the JCDA, there's only $1,942 in current liabilities. The total fund balances for the JCDA are at $2,530,742, of which $1,577,751 is restricted for TIF projects, and $952,992 is unrestricted. Looking at the statement of revenues and expenditures, year-to-date total revenue for the JCDA is $558,374, of which $165,023 is operating revenue, and $393,351 is TIF revenue. Year-to-date expenses are $561,071, and so the year-to-date net result is a deficit of $2,697. When comparing the annual budget to actual figures for the JCDA, 45% of budgeted revenues have been received, and 53% of budgeted expenses have been incurred. Any questions about JCDA results before I move on? Okay, for the John Sevier Center, the cash position is currently $191,438. There is $86,666 in the reserve account, $71,696 in the rental account, and $32,977 in the security deposit account. There's also $8,502 in normal receivables. There is $2,766 in accounts payable and $876,000 in other current liabilities, and that's related to the loans outstanding on the building. If you look at the statement of revenue and expenditures there, total revenue so far this year is $588,167. Year-to-date expenses are $549,772. The year-to-date net result is operating income before debt costs of $38,395. For the John Sevier, 57.4% of budgeted revenues have been received, compared with 72% of budgeted expenses. And this excludes depreciation, taxes, and interest, which are not included as part of the budget. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone have any corrections? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve?
Brent, I have one quick question. I apologize. I'm chiming in here late. Jim, just confirm for me what the unrestricted cash is that the JCDA has today in its reserve fund that it can actually use.
So the unrestricted cash is $952,992, and that's all the cash we have funding from the city, and that's sort of all the other kind of revenue we get, other than TIF. The revenue generated by TIF is restricted for TIF projects.
Does that count the 450 some thousand that's due from the John Sevier?
No, it does not.
Okay.
I excluded that.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
We have a first. Do we have a second?
Second, this is Tracy.
All right. Lindsay, will you please roll call?
Hank Carr,
Approve.
Yes.
Shannon Castillo,
Yes.
Tracy Johnson, Jody
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Brent Long,
Yes.
Freddie Malone,
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols,
Yes.
Seth Thomas,
Yes.
Robert Williams,
Yes.
and Joe Wise.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Moving on to the John Sevier Task Force. Diana, can you please bring us up to date on the John Sevier project?
Yes, thank you. So following 2 phone calls with the HUD resolution specialists in the last several weeks, we heard their concern that we find a management company that has prior experience with working with troubled properties, and they offered as a suggestion that we reach out to LHP. HUD felt that they would be better equipped with dealing with the paperwork that a troubled property requires. HUD did stress that having a partner in LHP at the current property would assist greatly in the Section 8 BB transfer process. On February 11th, the entire leadership team of LHP did a walkthrough of John Sevier. This included the president of the company, the CEO, and the COO of both the development and the management division, and their regional maintenance supervisor, who was also a REACT trained specialist. We really appreciate the leadership taking their time to come to Johnson City, and I believe it shows the quality of company that we're working with. Since that meeting, LHP has determined that they are willing to manage the current property, and we anticipate a management agreement in the next few days. They will also keep on any staff that we indicate needs to stay with the property. On Thursday, yesterday, Jim, Alvin Nance, and I had another phone call with HUD to talk about concerns about future REACT score and the process of switching the management agent. Alvin Nance is with us today. Alvin is the CEO of the development side, if you haven't met him yet. But he actually offered to come on to the call and just introduce the company a little bit and tell us where they are in the process of both the management and the development side.
Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Diana, for that. And I apologize to everyone. I told Diana that I'd like to do my workouts in the morning time, but that I wouldn't have time to take a shower before jumping on this call. So, hey, the great thing is that Zoom doesn't allow for smell, okay? That's a great thing. But as Diana just have shared with you all that through the walkthrough, let me just talk a little bit here first about where we are with regards to looking at the project itself. As you all know, we met with the committee, the disposition committee back in, I think it was January 14th, at which time we presented 3 scenarios to the committee at that point, taking a look at, you know, if we went out and built, you know, 150 units or brand new. We also looked at building 145 units brand new. And also we presented a scenario that looked at the rehab of the 150 units where it currently sits at. The directive from the disposition committee to us is that we needed to definitely look at fully evaluating the 145 unit new construction development. And so that's what we have been working on. At that particular time when we showed the scenarios at that point, we were working with somewhere around a $2.8 million funding gap in that 145 unit new development. Since that time, we've continued to finite those numbers and work a little bit more on getting some indications on some of the construction costs that we're seeing. And we're now looking at a true funding number somewhere around $3.7 million. LHP has identified or at least are evaluating 3 funding sources we think that could fund the full gap that we're looking at right now. We're still vetting those because they have some criteria with regards to for-profit entities versus non-profit entities. And so we're trying to make certain that as we can look at these funding sources, how best do we structure the legal entity that we would create to own the 145 unit new construction. We had told Diana we had hoped to be able to make that presentation to the disposition committee last week, but again, we a little bit more due diligence we need to do on a couple of those funding sources just to make certain that, you know, if they're not going to work fully, then we need to pull that out and plug in another funding source. But we're feeling really good that we'll be able to get back to Diana and the disposition committee next week and present to them, here's the model, what we're looking at. Here's what our funding sources are going to be. I think most of you are aware of the fact that we are looking at utilizing low-income housing tax credits to build these brand new units. And so that is one of the major parts of the funding that we're looking here. But again, because the Washington County is not what THDA has a tendency to refer to as a high county need, it makes it a little more challenging to be able to apply for 9% tax credits. And so we're looking at a model that is utilizing the 4% tax credit and bond program. And I think the simplest way to sort of help you understand a quick difference between those two funding sources, a 9%, if you're successful in securing a 9% tax credit, a 9% tax credit can fund almost 70% of your development costs. The 4% will fund somewhere in the range of 30 to 35% of your development costs. So, you know, same program, just two different ways of looking at it. The 9% are very competitive. So, we've been modeling a 4% deal because we realized that we can secure those funds and actually be able to pull something together. So that's what has generated this funding gap that we're looking at. Again, we've got a very small number in there for land acquisition. So we're still hopeful that there may be some ways of lowering that cost or finding some ways of getting some donated land or something to also help us in reducing again our gap. But we do feel good about the model that we have put together, and we think that we can deliver that model and be able to provide to you at the end a brand new 145 units. And let me just say real quick, the reason we're doing the 145 units is that HUD does allow for you to make a reduction in the number of units. They got this thing called a de minimis, which means that you can reduce it by at least 5 units. And part of the reason that we were reducing the units, because again, as we're pulling this model together, the more units we've got, the greater our gap becomes. And so what we're trying to do is narrow that down and try to find ways to reduce the funding gap. Also recognizing that, the Johnson City Housing Authority has availability either through their public housing or their Section 8 program, along with some of the other subsidized housing units in that area. So we know that HUD will feel good about the fact that, okay, we're only reducing by 5 units. And so we're not really talking about displacing 5 residents. We will look to try to relocate those residents into one of those programs there. So we will still be required to assist them. You just can't kick them out. So, but that's why we're looking at the 145 units as the model for us. Diana mentioned that we have had some conversations with the HUD office. I will say that we're feeling good about that working relationship. When the HUD people suggested to Diana that she reach out to us for stepping in as the management entity on the Johnson Severe Center, we thought that was a good opportunity for us to strengthen this working relationship between JCDA, the Johnson Severe Center, and LHP, and working with the HUD office in Atlanta, because they're going to be engaged in all 3 transactions that we need to get their assistance with. One, we got to deal with the REACT, that they're going to be involved. Secondly, they're going to be involved if we are successful in getting a rent increase on the existing HAP contract. They will be involved. And then thirdly, they will be involved with the ABB transfer of the HAP contract. So we're thinking that, we're stepping forward to help them. As you all know, the REACT score is one that we do need to work on. What we did learn, I think, when Diana and Jim and I talked with Benita and Lisa yesterday, the REACT score does have an impact on what it is we're trying to get done right now. We have got to work on getting a passing REACT score. We're not going to be able to get a rent increase with a failing REACT score, and we're not going to be able to transfer the HAP contract until we get a passing score. So it's critical that we begin to work on that. As Diana said, we had Scott to come in, our maintenance supervisor, who works with several of our properties and helping them when they need to get REACT ready before a REACT inspection takes place. He went through the property, took a look at things that visually that he could see. At this point, we had the opportunity to go into 2 units, and so some of his numbers is a guesstimate because we did not look at all units, but just from some visual things we looked at. Scott provided to us a report, and I've shared that with Diana and with Jim, and it's fairly sizable at this point. But I think what we are also looking at too is that we said to the HUD office is that our intent is to work toward addressing truly the life safety issues, get those things taken care of, continue to maybe work on some of the other issues. Their comment to us was is that, hey, definitely you want to be dealing with the life safety issues, but we want to see you continue to be working on the property. But, we're estimating just right now, somewhere around $280,000, that you may need to spend just for a REACT. And so we're trying to have this conversation with HUD to where we don't want to spend money in addressing some things within the property that we know that's not, the long-term use for the property. If we can avoid and putting some real hard capital dollars back into it, we're going to try to do our best, but we are going to have to get that score up to at least 60, which is a passing score. We got to get that done. I think the other thing we learned as well yesterday was the fact that HUD is, or the REACT inspectors who work for HUD have been a little bit slow in scheduling REACT inspections. And Diana indicated that it's kind of hard to say when we could have that REACT inspection rescheduled. We did talk to her about maybe being placed on a priority list so that they can maybe get to us a little sooner. It was not very encouraging when she told us yesterday that she looked at a report that showed only 5 REACT inspections had been performed for the entire country due to the COVID-19 situation, that they're just not arranging to go in. But I think Diana and Lisa, Benita and Lisa recognize that we all are working together, and so they're going to try to work with us to try to help us in that scenario. We are going to come back. Diana had made a suggestion that we have Scott to come back, maybe do another walk, let us really try to talk about what are those life safety issues we think we just need to really try to get onto and deal with right now. But maybe see a few more units other than the 2 units that we've seen at this point, so we can just give you a better feel for what we're talking about and maybe try to get it ready. But Scott does a great job in trying to get REACT ready, and so that's what Diane and I are going to talk with him about. Is that, hey, let's focus on the things that we need to focus on to get us REACT ready, to help us get a score. We recognize that we're not going to try to achieve, a 90. That's not what we're looking for. We're just trying to get to a 60. If we can get to a 60 at this point, we're going to be very happy because that way we pass. I guess the only other thing I would say to you here is that we are planning to get back with Diana and the disposition committee next week to present that final proposal to them, along with the funding sources that we think are available to actually close that gap. So a lot of work has been done. We're still working. We've commissioned 2 market studies. We received one of those, expecting the other one to come back either this week or next week. But those market studies will also be needed to help us to prove to HUD that JCDA ought to be able to get a rent bump right now. But so we sort of got this chicken and egg thing going on here right now, folks, is that we're trying to get this rent increase, but HUD's also trying to push us to address this REACT thing. So we're asking them to work with us.
Alvin, I have 2 questions for you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
First question is, those 5 units that we're looking to cut, pare down from 150 to 145, how much would that contribute to the funding gap? What's the per unit dollar amount that you guys have allocated there?
Well, when we were looking at that, Mr. Chair, when we were talking about 150 units at that time, we were closer to almost a $7 million gap.
Okay, so it's pretty significant per unit.
It's significant when per unit.
And the second question I have for you is, when do you feel like we will have a better idea, a little bit more firm number on that those capital dollars, what we're going to need to spend to feel good about getting a 60 on that REACT score?
Well, that's the follow-up meeting that Diane and I are talking about having with Scott. So we're going to try to get that scheduled next week to get him back in there so that we can try to firm that up, so we can start going through that. I think, Mr. Chairman, we all are very aware that, we don't want to spend that amount of money. We want to avoid doing that, but we do want to get in there and just try to make certain that we clearly, because what they said yesterday at the HUD office said, hey, you need to address the life safety issues. And I think if we can make certain that we address that, then we're good. Did you want to say something, Diana?
Yes. So just to give everyone a background, 2018 HUD did a REAC inspection. The score was 46. They came back and made additional repairs. And if you remember, we instructed them to do that. They got their score up to a 53.6, 54, something like that. Jim did confirm that, went through all of the things that they have done so far from that 2018 REACT inspection. What we're going to do next is get Scott over there again. We're going to do a priority list. What would bring us the most points, or what affects you actually get knocked off? So what are the highest things that we can do that will get our score up, that fall under life safety being the priority? And then we'll put together a budget for that. So it's really a matter of what's going to keep us from getting dinged on the REACT, what can be done cost effectively. And then Jim is going to let M&M know that there's some things that we want them to go ahead and start working on, some of the REACT things that they've probably let slide. In fact, we want them to go ahead and do some apartment inspections. They have not done apartment inspections because of COVID, but now that they have had some vaccinations and everything, we're going to really encourage them to do apartment inspections this month as well, while we have those two maintenance people on staff.
And I think that's a good point that Diane is making. I don't want to by no means at all apply to the board here that repairs have not been addressed. They have been working. There are some things, and we even looked at the last REACT letter, and some of the repairs related to what was on the REACT report have been addressed. So there are some things that have been addressed at this point in time. We just have not had the HUD inspector to come back at this point. Okay.
Hey, Alvin, this is Robert.
Yes, sir. Robert.
When we first purchased the property, we paid an independent third party to do a pre-REACT inspection. Is Scott at that same level that he can recognize what needs to be addressed and
yes,
what can, okay.
Yeah. We actually utilize him to send to some of our other properties when we know that there's a REACT has been scheduled. He goes and work with that property to get them REACT ready. And he goes through, prepares a list. And so he does have that ability to be able to provide us that information.
Great.
And Robert, we walked through that list. I walked through that list over at the Johnson Veer just this week. So we know what's been done and what's not been done. A lot of it's been done. A lot of the cosmetic stuff has not.
Yeah. And we're going to try to avoid a lot of the cosmetic if we can. I mean, I know it makes it look a lot prettier, but if we're not going to lose a lot of points off of that, then we may skip a few things.
Alvin Hankar here, a couple of questions and thoughts. What is from a rough time frame from today, when do you envision, if things went reasonably well, what do you see the horizon being for our ability to decommission this building from its current, HUD purposes? Is it 2 years, 3 years? What do you envision? Not the ones, just hypothetically, in my mind, it relates a little bit more about the money that we're going to need to invest here.
Let's assume that if everything went exactly smooth, and I hear what you're saying there, Hank. Let's say if we can get the REAC inspection done within the next 6 months.
Mhm.
Let's say that we can get the inspector in, the inspector comes in, we get a 60 passing score. Okay, that's good. Next step would be is that we would immediately then work on the rent increase from that point. I don't think it would take them that long, possibly maybe 2-3 months at best to approve the rent increase. The slow thing is what we have learned in talking with the legal firm we've hired in DC to assist us with the transfer to ABB. The ABB can take between 6 months and a year to actually move. That's, you know, and the group we've hired has done about 10 of those around the country. So if you're looking at, say, a year for the just the movement of the HAP contract, maybe 6 months. So I think the 2-year window is a reasonable window to think about. The fact that we're talking about utilizing the 4% tax credit program and bond program, the flexibility of that program is that you can apply at any point throughout the year to get the credits for the 4% side. So availability of those are going to be there annually for us. So it's just a matter of applying. So I think a 2-year is a reasonable best scenario.
I appreciate it. So, and I don't want to get ahead of your meeting next week to the disposition committee, but I think in addition to that, does that 2 years in a perfect scenario include the design and the construction, or is that in addition to?
That would be in addition to.
All right, that's what I figured. And so,
yes.
So you'll add another roughly 18 months to that process in a perfect world.
Yes, sir.
So we're 3 years in a perfect world. You know, maybe it's 4, and it could be longer, could be a little bit shorter, but you're somewhere in that 3 to 4 year window. So when I think of it that way, for somebody, I don't get worried about investing money in this building when we realize we're going to have to hold it for a while, and we've got quality of life issues and life safety issues as well. Don't get me wrong, but look, we're committed. From my perspective, I'm committed as a board member to investing the money it takes to get this HAP contract up. And I want you guys to know that that's always been our goal since the day we bought it. We just haven't had, you know, COVID. We stumped our toe on COVID, and we thought we were on the right track to get there. So we're in this completely to get it fixed correctly to get to the end. Yeah, I just want you to know that.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I think that also bear in mind that when we're talking about, you know, having that year period in which it may take to actually do the transfer of the HAP contract, you know, we will still be working on actually the development of the project. You know, we don't get this sense that in this conversation we've been having with HUD that we're going to go through all of this process of doing this transfer of the HAP contract, and we're going to get to a year's period, and they're going to say, well, no, we're not going to transfer it for you. So I think it's more of a process on the HUD end to get that done. So we don't have to wait until we get to the end of them saying, hey, yep, you guys been approved to transfer the HAP contract. We will be working at that point in time, again, securing the tax credits, locking down our land, and actually beginning some construction on that. So we will not look. So I think we can be shorter than a 4-year time frame.
But right now, our obstacle is a HAP contract, or sorry, a REACT test, and a $3.2 million variance in the development budget.
Right.
Okay.
And I would say to you that I feel a little bit better about the 3.2 million funding gap than I do in getting the score up right now. And not because I don't think we can get the score up, but, you know, until we get that inspector back in there, you know, we just don't know. I mean, we prepare for it, but until we get that inspector in there, we you know.
Just to remind everybody, the exterior of the building is a big part of the scoring process, and it is one area that building gets dinged tremendously and it's unlikely that you're going to invest any money other than to protect water intrusion and environmental intrusion into the building. That's a big problem that that's a big number to fix, and you probably won't deal with it. And so then you start moving inside and figuring out you have to have everything. I don't want to call it perfect, but it's just always been the obstacle there.
Mhm.
Well, Alvin, unless anybody else has any questions for you, I want to thank you for joining us today. That was very insightful.
Well, listen, I think what we're wanting to, and I've conveyed this to Dan, and I like to say it to the board, is that we view this as a partnership that all of us are trying to figure out this, and that's the same message that we have conveyed to the ladies in HUD, that we all are working to accomplish the same goal here, which is to provide better housing for the residents of John Sevier. So I think as long as we continue to keep that as a priority for each group, then we recognize that we got to collectively work here to make this thing happen. And I think they're on board with us.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I had maybe one more question, if I may.
Yes.
And this is maybe more of a question for Diana than Nance, but Diana, where do we stand on having a management company for the John Sevier? Are we sort of in limbo? And it sounds like Nance maybe can answer that question.
Well, we have told HUD that we will take over the management of John Sevier. As the HUD folks said to Diana, our experience with working with a troubled property, dealing with also, we're going to be dealing with the ABB transfer and also helping with the REACT score. Diana's had conversations with our president of our management division. They are working now to get a contract pulled together. Should hopefully have something to them maybe in a week. I know, Diana, we're trying to work to definitely be ready by the first week of March, because we've committed to take over management as of April 1st.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you all for being willing to do that. I think that's going to provide a lot of benefits, having that continuity all the way through.
Right. We agree. It's a first for us, because normally we're buying something that we're taking over that's in trouble. So we're providing this at this point, but this is a great opportunity for us all.
Very good. Well, Alvin, thank you again for joining us.
All right. Well, listen, I know y'all are going to be a lot longer. Diana said you got 2.5 hours, so I'm going to leave. But thank you this morning, and I appreciate that. And hey, you all have a great day.
Take care. Going to move on to the operations committee. Hank, can you give us an update there?
I'll defer to the staff. I'll just, so everybody on the call now gets a bit of a glimpse of the roller coaster we've been on for the last 30 days, 6 weeks. We've had some highs where we really thought we had great solutions, and some lows where we counted on some things that didn't materialize. But the great news is, I think it's worked out in some ways. You could say definitely to our benefit operationally. If LHP is willing to take over the property, they will have a vested interest in getting the score up. That's always been a challenge, is the REACT score. We've been sitting on pins and needles for a little more than a year now about that one. It does make kind of the business case that we kind of started off with. It changes the business case, but at the end of the day, we may not have really fully understood how that business model was going to work anyway, based on some of the comments from HUD, which are, I won't try to get into the nuts and bolts to it, but basically our ability to assist in this process really is rooted in whoever the management company is, not so much in us. And typically these management companies are owner occupants. In other words, they own the property and they manage it. You don't find a whole lot of third-party managers of HUD property based on what I've learned. But so, you know what, where we land now probably is, hindsight always being 2020, probably the best place for us to land. And I would tell you 2 weeks ago, I wasn't completely convinced of that, but every day I become more and more convinced that we're probably having a conversation with the right folks about management long term. And everybody needs to understand we're in this for a long term. Okay. Alvin is optimistic about that 4-year time frame. And and the reason is, they've got this fee built into this project. And for them, the longer the thing takes, the more you deteriorate into that fee. And so they're going to want to get it done quickly. It's just going to be, there's just so many obstacles out here that we just see the big ones right now. We don't even begin to see the little ones. So I think operationally, we're on the right track. Staff's done a good job. I have not had the margin to spend much time with it. And I will defer off to Diana and Jim for any updates, because there have been some significant ones in terms of operational changes and insurance and some other things. But generally speaking, we probably are about where we're going to have to be. We are going to have a called meeting next week or at some point in the next few weeks to talk about approving a management agreement. We do not at this point know what the terms and conditions of that are. We haven't reviewed the agreement. We haven't reviewed the fees. Well, maybe that's a good place for me to stop and turn it over to the staff.
Well, and Hank, if I can I'll say this. My wife says that I have a knack for stating the obvious, but it sounds like what I've heard today is that we don't really have a choice. HUD has said we would like them to be the management company. LHP has said, hey, we'll be the management company. My concern is, does it matter what that contract says? It sounds like we don't really have a choice.
You do have a choice. You have a current management company and you do have a choice. But ideally, when we're looking to the future, and they appear to be the best path to the future. But without getting into a lot of details, the strategy we were following was valid in every respect except for one, and that was HUD's perspective on who our potential partner was going to be. And I participated in that call, and you would expect these calls to offer you some leeway in your decision process, and we got none. We got not no, but heck no. You're not going the direction you want to go. I'm sorry. It's not personal. This is the way it's going to be. And when you're up against a deadline and you have that kind of obstacle, you can either dig in and fight and lose, and then you're really in trouble, or you can find another solution. And that's what we had to do. Diana, your floor.
So just very quickly, because we do need to move on, but Jim and I are both very willing to talk with y'all at any other time. Jim was we do have new insurance. It is a cost savings of about $5,000, and that has already been implemented. So we want to say thank you to Jim for working through that.
And that's $5,000 per month. So.
$5,000 a month. Yeah, I apologize. So the next steps Jim and I will meet with Bob and his team at LHP. I've asked for a meeting either Monday or Tuesday. That's when they will we'll get into some discussion about the management agreement. They are very they're very willing to work with us. They understand, we need to keep operations costs down. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they come up with and present to us. They were sort of surprised that we were paying all the salaries and having a 7.5% management agreement. We had already sent that to them as part of the due diligence documents. So there wasn't any surprise there. They knew what we were doing. So we'll have those meetings Monday and Tuesday. Like I said, we're going to get Scott back up here, identify, react things, see what we can get M&M's maintenance folks to start working on immediately while we're paying their salaries. And we will have a called meeting. As soon as I get that management agreement, I'll send it through legal, make sure everything looks okay. And our conversation with HUD was they feel very comfortable. They understand our April 1 deadline. As soon as we get the documentation to them, she's going to push it through. And they really don't have to do an official approval before we switch management companies. Lisa said we can submit the documentation if we do it mid path, as long as we've got it in there, they know it's coming. And they've already recognized that, they've already suggested that LHP was the one we need to go through. There should be no changes with HUD or no concerns with HUD of us switching the management agreement.
Jim, great job on getting that insurance changed over. That's going to be a tremendous savings. $60,000 a year over the next, 3 to 4 years is not insignificant. Moving on to disposition. Robert, do you have anything for us?
I don't have anything else. I think we've got an update from Alvin in our discussion, so I think we could move on.
All right, moving on. The amendment to the redevelopment plan. Craig could not be with us today, so I'm going to ask Diana to present that.
So we're presenting an amendment to the redevelopment plan that encompasses all the resolutions that have been passed by the county over the past 12 years concerning the redevelopment plan. This document also has clarification of the State Act of 2012 that was approved by the city and the JCDA. The JCDA placed 3 notices in the Johnson City Press, and we had a public hearing on February 17th. 14 people attended the public hearing. Most were there to hear the amendment. 2 individuals spoke out in favor of the TIF district as it was a way to support small developers to close the funding gap to rehabilitate property. No one spoke against. One residential property owner did share concern as to how TIF might negatively affect their private property value. We were also pleased to have 2 state representatives, both State Representative Rebecca Alexander and Tim Hicks attended that meeting, so public hearing, so that they could learn more about TIF and how we are using it in Washington County. The goal of this document is to have one amendment that will be attached to the redevelopment plan and that all entities will agree to how the plan is being followed. This document was created by Mark Mamatoff from Bass, Berry & Sims on behalf of the city and the JCDA, and then Culver Schmidt from who represented the county's interests. The documents, like I said, includes 9 resolutions that the county has approved and the inclusion of the State Tax Act of 2012. I'll go through just hit the highlights of the amendments, but if y'all have any questions following, you can let me know. The first section, it has verbiage about that we're corresponding with the TIF Act of 2012, with the exception of the 5% allocation of administrative fees that's included in the act, which will only come from the city's allocation, not the county's. The next section says that if any time the property taxes collected were to fall below the base tax amount, only the taxes imposed would be paid. The next section is for clarification. It's a statement that the allocation is based upon taxes collected and not using a base assessment method. And next are limitations that have been set by the county that are different from the Redevelopment Act or the Tax Increment Act. That says that 25% of property taxes will be withheld by the county for county purposes. The collected amount is a percentage of all property taxes collected in the county. Neither the city nor the county shall be required to allocate delinquent taxes that are collected. If the JCDA was to determine a specific parcel has paid their taxes late, the development authority can request in writing to the trustee that the parcel be paid after receiving. That it really is just the way that the city and the county calculate the taxes. Their computer programming doesn't show every particular parcel in the district for collection methods. But this way, this will assist our lenders to know that if we found out that a particular property that has a TIF already, that had not paid their taxes, we can go back and request those taxes. The county and the city will not pay into the TIF after December 31st, 2029, unless any debt is outstanding. The JCDA cannot extend the maturity of any TIF loan without prior approval from the county and the city. The county uses 2008 tax year as their base year. The city uses 2006. The JCDA cannot incur any debt that exceeds 10% of the value of the real property located in the district. And finally, the JCDA cannot incur any indebtedness over $25,000 without county approval. So that's just an overview of the amendment. It was approved last night by the city commission. It has been passed through CIA committee at the county and will go in front of the county commission on Monday night.
A question, Diana, why are we not asking them to extend the closing period of the TIF, which is something we as a group had talked about was one of our goals and priorities for, I guess, short term?
I'm sorry, I'm really having a hard time hearing you.
So
the year
it sunsets. We talked about extending that out because right now you're going to really run out of benefit period, for lack of a better word, in the TIF program. And we talked about one of our number one priorities was getting that extended out.
Correct. So so there's several elements with that. And the first is the county had already put that in their they'd already done a resolution with that end date. This says that we can't occur, we can do project-based TIFs and extend that deadline if the county would approve us. It would be in the development agreement that the county would approve us to take on that debt that would be past the 2029. We also have a meeting next week with Mark Mamatoff to look at, is it best, we're one of the few counties that has a district-based TIF. Now, most cities and counties in the state do project-based TIFs. So we're going to talk with Mark about, is it best that we begin doing project-based TIFs and have the debt incurred based on just the project and the property value on that project versus the entire district.
Okay.
Can I add one thing to that? Hank, that piece was in a resolution that went through the county a few years ago, and the county really did not have an appetite for extending the end date on the TIF. And in fairness, you know, most that I've heard of, most times, rather than just continuing to extend the end date, there's kind of a retooling of the program. So I think that's really what we should be looking at, kind of like Diana was mentioning.
The whole point of TIF is the government gives up some of their property taxes and future property taxes. And the trade-off is after a certain number of years, they realize that benefit again. So I mean, I know everyone wants to keep all this money, but there is a point in time where it just does need to, our current redevelopment plan needs to come to an end. Our government needs to realize all the property taxes they've been foregoing. And then we just retool it and do it based on project, which is what most everyone else does in TIF. We are very weird having a district TIF, and we've been really blessed to have all of that.
And so, like I said, Craig and I are meeting next week with Mark to talk about moving forward, how we can continue to use TIF as a tool, especially knowing that we've got projects coming on Walnut Street, and how we start to go from a district TIF to a project-based TIF program.
Very good. Any further questions? If not, do we have a motion to approve the amendment?
I'll make a motion. This is Jody.
I'll second that.
Thank you all. Lindsay, will you please do a roll call?
Yes. Okay, Hank Carr,
Yes.
Shannon Castillo.
Yes.
Tracy Johnson,
Yes.
Jody Jones,
Yes.
Brent Long,
Yes.
Freddie Malone,
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols,
Yeah.
William Roller,
I have to pass. I didn't get to hear it.
Seth Thomas,
Yes.
Robert Williams, and
Yes.
Joe Wise.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. Moving on to the HR committee report. I'm going to give the highlights on that. The HR committee took a look at two different salary resources that compared how our ED's salary compared to folks in other parts of the country. GuideStar 2018 data and IEDC 2019 data. You should have had opportunity to take a look at both of those in your packets. Jumping to the highlights, when we're comparing the salary of our executive director at $60,000 base, $68,000 if you include benefits, you stack that up against GuideStar, which in those numbers, it does include benefits. On the low end, it was $86,000 compared to that was the national average, and $103,000 is the Tennessee median salary average. So if you took the lower of those two, that $86,000, which does include benefits, compare that to the 68 Diana's, which does include benefits, that's an $18,000 delta there. Jumping over to the IEDC 2019 data, which those numbers do not include benefits, the average over there was $79,000. So if you compare the $79,000 that does not include benefits to Diana's number of $60,000, not including benefits, that's a $19,000 delta. So between the two, we see some consistency there. $18,000 delta on the GuideStar data, a $19,000 delta on the IEDC data. So HR committee is here today to present that we believe there's an $18,000 to $19,000 gap in what we're paying our executive director versus similar size agencies out there. The GuideStar data was based on the salary range was based on a $1.1 million to $2.5 million budget, which falls right in where we are. And this is not coming with a recommendation. This is just coming with giving you guys the information and the thought that, when it comes time to begin the budget process, this is something we need to consider at that point. Have any questions? Or Tracy, Shannon, Jody, do y'all have anything you'd like to add to that?
I don't. You covered it really well.
All right. No further questions. We'll move on to the chair report. I have nothing to report. We'll finish up with staff reports.
Great, thank you. Since it's 8:59, I'm going to just ask you to look in the packet for the updates that the staff have provided. Obviously, you've heard that Jim and I have spent an incredible amount of time working with the HUD, LHP, JCHA, all of that negotiations. But we feel really comfortable in the way that it's going and who our partners are. You would have received you received a electronic version of our year-end review that Lindsay worked incredibly hard on. And you probably will receive today a printed version of it. We also sent it out to all of our stakeholders, including City Commission, County Commission, and some key investors in the downtown district. I just really want to say thank you to Lindsay for working really hard on that. And then all the work that Jim has done on the insurance with the John Sevier. Both of those are key things that we should be really proud of. And I think looking at that year-end review, you can really see all the things that we've been able to accomplish in a 12-month period, which is actually just absolutely perfect to lead us into our strategic planning time. And so I'm going to go ahead and unless you have a question for the staff, I'll just turn it back over to Brent to adjourn us so we can begin. I can give you some instruction on our strategic planning.
Great. Thank you, Diana. Unless there's any further business, we will adjourn the board meeting. And Diana, you'll give us directions for the strategic planning workshop to follow.
Great. Thank you so much. So my goal is, I know some of you have to get off here right before 10 o'clock. So my goal is really that we get through this, and hopefully you'll see that the staff has done enough work that we can get through this next project or planning time in the next hour. I will give you about a 3.5-4 minute stretch break if you need to go fill up your coffee or run to the restroom or whatever. But the way that we're going to do this is I'm going to present a plan that the staff has put together. We've taken your priorities and put them into goals and objectives. I will present this. When it comes time to editing or taking notes on the objectives, I'm going to turn it over to Dave, and he's going to help us facilitate a discussion for a little bit. And then Lindsay is going to monitor the chat. So so at any time you want to share something you think in our goals or objectives, a word needs to be changed or a direction needs to be changed, if you will, you can put that in the chat and Lindsay will be monitoring that. So we're going to go ahead and take just a couple of minutes break, and we'll come back at 9:04. Jim back? No.
Hey, Lindsay, real quick before we get started, do you have some of those printed reports that I can pick up or get from you to have at Summit?
Absolutely.
Maybe would it be appropriate to get about a half dozen?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. And
yeah, I can get them to you on Monday.
All right, great. Or I can pick them up if that's easier.
Sure, that'll work.
Okay, thanks.
You sure can.
Before we get started, Diana, downtown is looking really good. Love that picture.
Thank you. We it's beautiful right now. It's snowing.
Yeah.
I only wish you could have gotten a monolith in that picture before it
I
was taken
know.
away.
I know.
Dave, did you know they put one downtown?
No.
Somebody did.
No. Oh yeah, that's yeah. Yeah, that's right. I
think
saw
that-
that.
I think the owners have picked it up actually now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad because that thing wasn't cheap.
Right.
There are future plans for that monolith. So I hear.
Diana, do you know when they're going to be opening up that new outdoor adventure park?
So right now they are trying to think what the challenges have been. Oh, the railings. So the metal railings that go around the perimeter of the playground, they're going to be doing some artwork on that, some metal artwork. And so they're a little bit behind on getting that done. The plan, they were hoping to get it open the same time they would have the history circle ready early March, but it looks like it's probably going to be sometime in April that they get that done. But they're trying to add, create a safety barrier. There's also some shade sails that they've got on order that hasn't come in as well as either, but they're hoping mid to early April. Okay, I believe we're at our time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is a strategic plan taking what we have worked on back in January and then again in June and moving forward. So I'm going to remind you of our mission statement, that is to facilitate redevelopment for a vibrant downtown Johnson City. Oops, forgot to put Johnson in there. I took some of the work that we have done in January and June, some keywords to create a vision statement for the JCDA. And that vision is to operate as a catalyst for Johnson City by coordinating public-private programs that promote the redevelopment and growth of the downtown business district. The JCDA works to assure the long-term economic stability of downtown by maintaining the unique character of the district and supporting projects that assure Johnson City is a great place to live, work, play, invest, and do business. I'll share this entire slide deck with you a little bit later. My apologies. And if there's anything that you feel like that we need to look at that vision statement, we can do that. But the goal is really to develop our business district, redevelop it, and look at the long-term economic stability of the downtown. Just a reminder, there are two key elements in Johnson City's strategic plan that we are strategic partner in, and that is economic vitality. Their direction is to support existing businesses and increase talent retention efforts, recruit and attract new businesses with a focus on remote workers, cultivate a local entrepreneurial ecosystem, encourage economic development in traditionally underserved areas. The way that we fit into the strategic plan in their quality of life category is by increasing the downtown footprint and vibrancy, and continued investment in the West Walnut Corridor redevelopment and promote the downtown district as a designation. I just share those with you as a reminder that we took, because the city has indicated that we're a strategic partner in this, we kept those in mind as we put together our objectives. These, just as a reminder, we listed 1 to 3 year priorities in our June meeting. They are John Sevier, both the operations and the redevelopment of that property, parking solutions, and organizational health. The downtown center, business recruitment, and TIF facilitation, and the future use of TIF in the downtown. Thank you to the 9 board members who submitted filled out the survey. It was a little bit different than your typical SWOT, but that's what we were asking for, what you thought our accomplishments were that we intentionally did, and then things that we may have not been intentional about, but that it occurred. Some of our accomplishments, it was our organizational independence. All this is listed in order of number of people that listed this. Organizational independence, the John Sevier operations, our accounting procedures being taken care of, marketing and promotion growth, the fact that we've been able to pivot on the John Sevier Center management, the fact that we were able to get a reduction in the John Sevier loan payment, staff additions that we've added this year, and working within a tight budget. Some of the setbacks that we had, I believe everybody listed COVID. That is has definitely been a challenge for all of us. The HUD challenges with the management contract has been a setback, poor communication, and then the fact that the John Sevier Center transition is longer than what we originally anticipated. For those of you that were on the board for the last few years, you know, we felt like this would be an 18-month to a 2-year project, and obviously it is going to be, we're in it for a much longer duration. Opportunities that we have, John Sevier development, this goal development program that we're going through now. We want to continue board communication, better board communication. We have an opportunity, several of you mentioned, supporting existing businesses as they continue to go through COVID recovery, the future of TIF and how that looks. We want to continue to make sure that our financial reporting is done in a timely manner. And I will bring to your attention that Jim was able to get the financials to you in the board packet the week prior to the meeting. So that's I think we've got a good handle on that now. The opportunity for downtown center utilization, future use, Walnut Street development, and then post-COVID opportunities. Potential threats to the organization is the progress on John Sevier Center, the chance that we might not focus on priorities, which I think this goal and objectives will help with that. COVID recovery and challenges, just not knowing what's going to, how our economy is going to be impacted in businesses and job development. And then the fact that we need to look at a plan, develop a plan for Connect Downtown Johnson City, which is the new name for the foundation, to become financially dependent. The last question that we had on the survey was one that came from a book that Dave had suggested that I read. And that question was, if every other area of our operation remained at its current level of performance, what is the one activity or action that could change that would have the greatest impact? And the 3 things that you all listed was the John Sevier Center, parking solutions, and a revenue stream for Connect Downtown Johnson City. I'm going to keep moving on. For the purpose of this planning process, because we are now more than halfway through our current fiscal year, when I say year 1, that is our that will include a 16-month plan. That is the 4 months still left in this fiscal year, and the 12 months that will be in the fiscal year 21-22. Year 2 is the fiscal year 22-23, and then year 3 will be fiscal year 23-24. So this plan actually has goals that will take us through June of 2024. Are there any questions about that? Okay, moving on. So here's where we are. What we did was, or what I did was, I took the top priorities that we had listed at both the January and the June planning meeting. I took those priorities and I developed a goal statement for each one. And then we had developed at least 3 objectives for each one of those goals. Following this, the staff will take the objectives and put together an action plan. But right now, you're looking at goals and objectives on these plans. We will also be very intentional to make sure that they are measurable. We identify any barriers in the action plan and that they are realistic. I'm going to introduce these, read these to you, and then if there's anything that needs to be changed, I'm going to work in real time to change those, and Dave will facilitate that discussion. Just a reminder, you can use your chat box and the chat tool, and Lindsay can let us know if there's any questions there. The first goal, obviously that was our #1 priority, and that's to successfully redevelop the historic property as a transformational project within the district. We divided these into 3 objectives. The first one is operations. We're going to work with the HUD approved management agent who is qualified to manage the property, improve the REACT score, and ensure a safe environment for the residents. This is this says year 1 because the goal this first year is really to get the REACT score up and get that the process in place towards the HAP transfer. The second objective involves the HAP transfer. We're going to work with the development partner and any consultants, and we will make sure that we provide documentation needed to produce a complete application with the highest likelihood of being approved by HUD. We'll also address any needs the development partner might have for future property development. The third objective is long-term, but we're going to have an ongoing communication process for any interested development properties, development companies for the revitalization. I'll turn this over to Dave to see if there's any discussion or things that people feel like needs to be changed.
Yeah, feel free to jump in, or like Diana said, we use the chat if you feel more comfortable kind of throwing out a question or a comment via the chat room, and Lindsay's going to monitor that. But any thoughts on these? Do these sound reasonable and fitting to where you are as an organization right now as part of the strategic plan moving forward?
Dave, the only thing I want to add in the first one is we need to make some note about maintaining a positive financial I don't know what the right terminology is, but there needs to be something in the John Sevier operations about maintaining a positive financial operation.
Positive cash flow, or?
I don't know. I'll defer to the staff, but so there's got to be some. We're going to be faced with spending a lot of money there. We just got done talking about that. We got to figure out how to fund that.
Okay.
That can't come out of operations totally. I don't know how we're going to do it yet. We may have the money, we may not.
This is Jody. Just another piece, especially, well, you have safe environment for the residents. It'd be my preference that we add something about high quality of life, or and strong relationship. You know, we've used that language before, particularly, you know, given the timeline that we have now. I think that investment is going to become increasingly important.
All right, good input. So something in terms of the cash flow piece and the quality of life. What was the other one you mentioned, Jody? There was another one. You had quality of life and you said something else, right?
Strong communication.
Okay.
And I know that's, really something that the management company will need to prioritize, but I think it's important for us to have that as a, that we're interested in that we're invested in that we're watching that.
Good catch.
I'm going to just put this in italics and what Jody said, and we'll add that in too. I'll wordsmith it later. That's okay.
And then what we're planning to do process-wise, just so the board knows, and Diana had mentioned this, is we go through these kind of big picture objectives, key results that we want to get over the next 1 to 3 years. We're going to work with the staff on establishing SMART goals for each of these that would support them on a timeline, things that are specific, measurable, things that are attainable within that time frame, relevant to the mission of the organization, and then we'll put deadlines, time sensitivity on each one of them. And that will come back to the board, I believe next month, right, Diana? We'll get it out to everybody ahead of time, the SMART goals, or we'll start working on those.
Yes. And this also, just for information, is these goals and objectives will help us as we develop our budget for the next year.
Questions, any further questions, comments on these 3 objectives? And this is not your last shot at this. We're getting this out and Diana will get this slide deck to you. So this will be a process over a few months here. But we wanted to get a starting point so we can start getting specific measurable goals under each one on a timeline.
All right. If not, I'll move on to the next one. These are actually in order of priority for the most part from what we listed in January and June. Parking solutions. We are going to continually evaluate the parking capacity for businesses, residents, and visitors within the district. One objective is to promote public parking lots and access. Another objective is we're going to wait until after COVID restrictions have been, when people are now returning full force to downtown, but we'll request development services to manage a parking study to identify gaps in parking availability. That was part of their plan for this past year, but it got delayed. So we'll request that they will do that. And then we'll identify solutions to utilize the downtown center parking garage more effectively. There is another goal that just relates to the downtown center, but this goal just relates into using that parking garage to the best way possible.
I have a quick question, Diana. This is Tracy.
Yes, ma'am.
And whatever happened with the elevator project? Is this an okay time to bring that up? I'm assuming it's dead,
So
but
that's sort of under objective number 3. The bids came in at much more than what we were anticipating. It is still a viable option. If we choose to go forward with that, we would have to request TIF to build that elevator. So that's under that objective number 3 that we will circle back to how the parking garage is being used, how we can have more access, and how we can utilize it to its greatest potential.
Tracy, I'll add kind of my thoughts to it. I don't think the parking, the elevator is dead at all, but you don't control that parking deck. You essentially have privileges to use it. And until you renegotiate that contract with Northeast State and gain total control of that deck, I don't know why you would invest the money. Number one, you'd have to get their approval, which there was a conversation about that, and they wanted to tie that to their extension of their agreement. And it just got, I wasn't involved in it. Brett has the color. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. it's a much bigger issue than just parking. Is all about extending, redeveloping the downtown center. But anyway, it gets pretty complicated.
Okay, I just wanted to check in there. Hadn't heard anything in a while.
Good. Anyone else on this topic? And again, this remains open, so you'll get this slide deck. And remember that the staff is going to be working on those SMART goals under each of these. So things like that, Tracy, that you brought up, those are excellent things. Like I think that's one of the things, after this or before the next meeting, that we capture those notes. Because you may think of something tomorrow or the next day, let's capture some of that. We'll put it as part of the record for the meeting next month. If somebody thinks of something that we can, the staff can address, that would be subcategories to these main objectives, or if we've missed a main objective that you think we need on here. But I will say, just from a coaching standpoint on this, that you don't want a long list of the major objectives. We'd like to keep focused on a shorter list and then have subcategories underneath these so that we do them well.
I have one more question, Diana. I'm sorry. With regard to parking, I know that at one point in time, the city had discussed, I don't know what they were calling it, a parking committee or
Parking authority.
Right. So is that still happening? Where is that? Can the JCDA be involved in that? Can that be part of this parking solutions? I've heard a lot of chatter. I've been asked to be involved, and then meetings never happened at the city level, that kind of thing. So I didn't know if you knew anything about that or where that's going.
At this point, I don't believe that there's been any movement on that. COVID really has affected a lot of things in our city government development services. So I think we start with the parking study so that they can identify those gaps. And then the next recommendation could be that they develop a parking authority. Part of the challenge right now is parking right now falls under police to manage the parking tickets. If you created a parking authority, you could hire someone the city could hire someone to come in and check parking timelines, the amount of time somebody's been parked in a 2-hour lot, and do that ticketing on behalf of them. But the development services folks do have I got the parking authority designation and information from Greenville, Tennessee. They have that, and at some point, if the city feels like that is a direction that they need to go, we can definitely support them and would support them to do that.
I know at one point in time,
Diana, may I?
Sorry.
I just wanted to respond to that. We certainly had talked about a parking authority. In fact, when the commission went to Chattanooga, the fall or early winter before COVID, that was one of the groups we met with in Chattanooga. The city's expression or discussion on that was really at its most earliest stages. And so it wasn't like there was a specific proposal or support or opposition, but I think it's certainly a tool in the toolbox. And I just, I don't think it's something that's necessarily fallen through the cracks. It just hasn't come to fruition is all I would want to add.
My comment there, Mayor Wise, would be, and back to my original comment with Diana, I'd like to see if that does come to fruition, just to make sure that the JCDA is working in tandem with the city so that we're not working on one aspect of working and then the city doing something else. So just, I'm glad.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm glad to hear.
Yeah, no, we just did that. That's just an acknowledgement of a concept that could be part of the solution. But, at this point, like Diana said, COVID has thrown a whole bunch of other variables into the mix. We've kind of lost a whole year.
Absolutely.
But this is very helpful to catch these added subpoints that we do want to make as part of the plan.
This is Jody, and I can't help myself. I happened to tour this little town in Sweden that's similar in the size and demographics to Johnson City some years ago, and their downtown city management group that I talked with talked about how they explicitly worked to exclude parking from their downtown because parking lots are ugly. And I totally understand that we're not in Sweden. And, you know, we have a different culture and a whole different mindset here. And I'm absolutely a pragmatist, but I would just encourage us to think radically substantive thoughts around parking and in the context of all of these objectives, which are completely reasonable. We, you know, kind of have commensurate work around promoting a culture of walking and doing other things and not filling up our downtown with a bunch of cars. So that's my thought.
Yeah, good input, because it can be a both and. I mean, as far as, you know, how we make it look. But I, you know, I'm not a board member, but I would make a motion that we all go to Sweden and study that town.
It's the coolest place, and I can talk about it for hours, but yeah.
All right, thanks, Jody. Good input, y'all. Who else hasn't, if you haven't had a chance to jump in yet, or if you're not quite sure, but if you want to give a thumbs up or whatever, feel free to do that through the chat, just so we know that you're kind of in favor, or you have a question, or you think this needs more discussion. But we'd like to get everybody's input or think about it. There's old Brent gave us a thumbs up. Anyone else before we move on to the next slide? And again, this is still open, so this is not a final on this. Tracy, did you have something? I'm sorry. No, you're good. Okay.
So I'll go on to the third, and that is I have gone from calling it organizational structure to now organizational health. And I'm just realizing that I did not write a goal there. So I need to add that in as often as I went through this. But there's 3 objectives under that. That we need to develop a budget that allows for funds needed to achieve the organization's mission and vision. That's a 3-year goal. We evaluate staffing to provide support for these organizational goals, and we ensure that processes and systems are efficient and support the work of the organization. All these are ongoing.
And Diana, I'm assuming that this also addresses the issue of communication and proactive communication and board communication that we've talked about before, that came up as a one of the things that probably is needs attention and continual focus and even some improvement.
And to Dave's point, I think it needs to be explicit in the wording of one of these objectives, or perhaps an additional objective, because communication is really important across, you know, from JCDA and outward, as well as within JCDA. And it's something you don't see at all. You can't even really intuit it from any of those unless you consider processes broadly.
Yeah, I would agree, Jody. I think since that has shown up on both the evaluation and on this recent survey, we need to capture that specifically. And I don't know how the board feels, but I've seen significant improvement in some of those processes and communication from my perspective. But I'm coming in fairly fresh. Y'all have a lot more history.
Totally.
Like it's moving in the right direction.
Yes.
I would like some mention in here of I realize we're in what we'll call temporary quarters today. They've worked. We've been able to afford it, but they don't really meet our long-term goals. And so we need to, within the next 3 years, certainly 2 years, we need to address that.
Thanks, Hank.
I had a real hard time hearing Hank. So if you will just put that in the chat, Hank, I'll be glad to add it and develop that. Or we are also recording this so Lindsay can get it to us.
Good. Any more on this issue of organizational health? And this is a broad category of systems, processes, financial reporting, communication, making sure the organization is healthy and sustainable, scalable. I mean, those would all be parts of this whole organizational health, that we're in position to grow and do things with excellence and efficiency. Any other thoughts on that one? All right.
All right.
Diana.
Moving on. Downtown center. We want to determine the best and highest use for the property. We're going to do a data-driven analysis of the use of the space by the current tenant. That's in year one. We're going to produce a list of possible alternative uses for the building. And then we'll either renegotiate the lease or identify a new tenant for the property. Just a reminder, the lease goes through December 2023. That lease is with the state Board of Regents. So there's a lot of challenges with working with that lease. So the first thing we're going to start out with is looking at the data of how it's being currently used.
Questions on this one, comments?
I have one comment. Tell me, what do you mean by data-driven analysis?
Well, so over the past few years, I have asked for numbers of current students and faculty that are in that space. That those numbers have not been, they have not met the goal that Northeast State originally had said would be in the building. Obviously, the last 9 months, they haven't had hardly anyone in the building. And so we want to look at how they are using it. Do they have goals for the space past 2023 or goals for the next 2 years on increasing the number of students and classes? And there's been some challenges. The space hasn't been adequately used by Northeast State. So the first thing we need to do is look at per square foot, maybe how many students do they have in the space over a week's time, and look at some real strong data of how they're using it so that we can build a case if we feel like they are not the ideal tenant for that space. But we've got to have that real written data first to analyze. So
can we add a qualitative and quantitative element to that? Like, maybe, desired number of people or a certain demographic of people that would be spending money or that would be utilizing or supporting businesses downtown. Is that part of the mix that we're looking for in use of that building? Is not like number of people plus being consumers? That was a question just for clarification.
Yeah. How are you going to get that data?
They've been very good about giving us updates of the number of students that they have, the number of classes that are occurring in the building, that type of thing.
That's good to hear because they're not obligated to share it with you.
No. But they, we used to have them actually come to a board meeting occasionally and just give an update of how many students they have and that type of thing. As partners in that project. So the relationship is there, and I think that they don't have to give us the data, but they've been very good to work with.
Good, thank you, Shannon. Any other thoughts on that? If you haven't shared yet, any input that you might have on either this or maybe something's come to mind on one of the things that we previously discussed. Again, we're not closing those down. So if we need to go back on the slide deck, we're happy to do so if something came to mind. Any other thoughts on that first objective? All right, Diana.
All right. Next one is priority is business recruitment. We want to create an environment that is attractive to remote workers and first floor retail and service businesses. This goes along with the city's strategic plan as well. Our objective is to market the district through the Downtown Now campaign, showcasing vacant properties and downtown success stories through our media channels. That is year one. We want to utilize the $50,000 grant from Tennessee Main Street to provide financial support for a retail incubator and up to 3 pop-up shops. That is year 1 and 2 remaining in that grant. And to educate the public on incentives such as facade grants, the downtown redevelopment loan program, and other business tools that are available year 1 through 3.
All right, input on this.
Can you provide a little clarification about how this overlaps with or is the same or different from what the foundation is looking at or their work?
So the foundation, the Connect Downtown Johnson City, will really be the group that facilitates the retail incubator and the pop-up shop, but the grant is actually in the JCDA's name. So so that economic vitality and the marketing committee through the Connect Downtown Johnson City and their board will facilitate the recruitment of the retail incubator. They'll also work with Founders Forge and Sync Space when it comes to the training component for that was part of that grant.
So some of the scope of work here is not the JCDA.
So I think that's where this partnership comes in, Jody. You know, the city has in their strategic planning put the several things on economic development for job opportunities and the downtown vibrancy. And by working in partnership with the Connect Downtown Johnson City group, you know, continuing to fund that organization and the staffing that it uses, they will be doing a lot of the work, but they'll report back to the JCDA.
As long as the SMART goals really do designate, you know, who's doing the work so that we end up with a really clear scope of work for you in particular, but also everyone, I think that would resolve any concerns I would have on this.
We'll definitely put that in the SMART goals that come out.
Great.
And Jody, that's a good point. And one conversation that came up with Diana at one point was even creating, I don't know if you've had a chance to do this, Diana, but creating some sort of visual between the relationship between, you know, Connect JC and the JCDA and the city of Johnson City and how those all kind of, you know, work together, support each other, who's serving who. And it might be helpful. That may even be like when you're talking about, that just came to mind there as you were raising that issue, Jody, is to again, around the communication goal is to create clarity around what that, what those relationships define them maybe better is what maybe that's a SMART goal would be to define how those organizations all function together and make sure they're pulling in the same direction. Tracy, seemed like you had a thought there. I just was reading your mind. No, you're good. All right. Anyone else? This is great input. Y'all, this is good stuff. Anything on there that we want to add or that we want to catch as a sub point that needs attention when we're setting goals? All right, Diana.
Right. TIF facilitation. Oh, I'm sorry. To continue to invest in the downtown district by identifying projects that are a well-qualified use of TIF funds. 3 objectives: educate property owners on how to design projects that will meet the qualification standards of TIF. That's ongoing. We need to maintain deliberate communication with city and county officials on current and future TIF projects, and investigate the future use of the TIF tool past the current redevelopment plan.
I would just love to see one SMART goal in there that includes bringing in outside experts to talk with us about other cities' redesign of TIF. And I can help find some of those people, but there are probably more qualified people on the call for that. But I just think we don't know enough about next level TIF programming.
So I think that we can put that as an action item under the 3rd objective, to investigate the future use of TIF. And then that the first step in that is this conversation that we're going to have with Mark Mamatoff next week.
Hey, Diana, there's also the CDFA, that, you know, the seminar that you got me to take, and I think they do this kind of thing as well, in terms of, you know, trends and that kind of thing.
Yes.
So, Hank here, so the number 2 objective, maintain deliberate communication with the city and the county. So for me, that's just part of the day job. I don't see that as an objective. I mean, that's just a given requirement of the job. Is there something else we can put in here that's got some sort of a deliverable that we can measure and that moves the needle forward?
Which section? Oh, which objective did you mention, Hank? I'm sorry, my air kicked on and I'm having a hard time hearing.
Number 2.
Number 2. Okay.
For me, that's part of the day job. That's what we have to do every day to be successful in our role. You know, what could we add as an objective that moves the needle on TIF? Not, you know, I mean, you know, what do we need to do to improve the success of TIF, to improve the success of downtown? That's my question. Not, I want something that moves the needle.
I mean, in the case of the county, there has not historically been, you know, routine communication. I feel like in the last year and a half or so, we've really stepped up our game. So improved communication has moved the needle. And in fact, I think it was in October that Diana came to the CIA committee and not only communicated, but had a really high level discussion with a few of us about the utility of TIF, the way it works. And it was really good, like almost educational, thought-provoking, problem-solving style conversation, which is really where it needs to go, I think.
Diana, is what, and I want to address Hank's concern about this, but is this something to where we put in a proactive system? And again, as part of the measurables on this is the frequency and the type of communication that we would have on an ongoing basis. I do understand what and appreciate what Hank's saying about this is a core part of the job. But again, as an outsider listening to and seeing the review and some of the other communication or conversations on this, I don't know that that has been consistent over the years. And I think if there was a a way to track this if part of it became, and Hank, I do appreciate, because it does need to be part, but it's almost like a real specific in somebody's job description of making it's so important that we maybe need to have something that is both measurable and where we build in accountability for it taking place, because it is vitally important to the future of TIF. Does that make sense? Hank, what do you think? Or is it just?
Well, again, I just stand by my first statement, which is we have this thing we have to do every day, and that's communicate with our board, communicate with our partners. Those are givens. I just don't think we list those as organizational objectives. If we don't do that, we haven't, and we've improved. I agree with everything that has been said. I'm just asking for an objective in this world of TIF that moves the needle. I don't know. Maybe there's nothing. I'm just kind of.
Well, let's cook that a little bit, because there may be something there. And again, it's something we could add, or possibly we go back on that and that becomes part of the communication systems under one of the previous goals, and we capture it there. When we're trying to improve systems and efficiencies within the organization, and maybe we look at trying to identify a third objective in this place that would be maybe more forward moving than, like you're saying, more tactical in the day-to-day operations. So let's capture that. And if we have other thoughts on it now, fine. But again, we can add to this as we go through it. So we could just, note this one to maybe try to find something that's, just more moving the needle kind of thing towards what's happening with TIF. Any additional thoughts on that? But we do agree that systematic, regular, proactive, clear communication and relationships on this is really important. We just need to figure out how to make that part of the regular operations of the organization. Jody?
It's symbiotic with the third objective, because, as you're growing your sophistication around what TIF point 2 is going to look like, and you're engaging in proactive communication / education with stakeholders, you really are positioning yourself to be ready for implementation of something new when the time comes and you have buy-in. So given that that's been a challenge in the past, and it's really a multifaceted challenge, it's not something that just the JCDA has struggled with. There hasn't been good bi-directional, multi-directional engagement. I feel like it's a component of what needs to happen.
I like your TIF 2.0 kind of phrase too. I mean, that'd be a good way to frame or think about how do we take it to the next level.
So here's a thought. I don't know if this is the right way to characterize it, but we all admit that TIF is, one of the top 3 priorities of the organization. And we also know that it takes the county's approval to fully utilize TIF. And so maybe number 2 is to establish a positive majority on the county commission to support potential TIF projects. In other words, we think that's an area that really helps us move. I think that's an area that really helps us move the needle. How you do that is through communication, through education, through all kinds of things. But I see that as a huge obstacle for us. We've talked about it 100 times. So just a thought.
No, that's good. That's more results focused. It's basically this, it's taken that same objective really and making it results oriented rather than process oriented. Good.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah.
I like this. I just would say there was probably a way to phrase it that captures the spirit of co-creating a TIF with the county, such that there's mutual agreement that this is the right way to go, and it doesn't sound like you're just trying to wrangle votes. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's what Hank meant.
Yeah, and that takes time and dialogue, doesn't it? I think. Hey, listen, I apologize. I'm going to have to hand this back off to Diana. When I agreed to help with this, I had a important 10 o'clock meeting I have to exit and get into that I'm running. So I've got to be there. Anyways, great input today. And I just want to thank this board again for the privilege of inviting me and letting me work with the JCDA. It's been a real privilege and seeing good things happen and a good meeting today. So thank you all very much. But I'm going to have to leave the meeting at this point, and I'll turn it back over to Diana. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Dave. So that's the last of our goals. And what my plan is, I will highlight these items that we have started doing a tweaking on. I will send that out. And if you all have some suggestions, feel free to call me or send me an email. If there's something that we need to add to these goals or these objectives, we certainly can do that. And then I'll present them for approval next month. And then, like I said, the staff will also start working on, excuse me, action items for these objectives. And if any of them need to be added into a budget item, we can do that as well. Are there any questions on these goals before I go to the last slide?
How does the downtown foundation play into our goals this year?
So that's the next question, the next slide. Let me go here. So this is the plan that we have put together in the relationship of how they connect. JCDA's 4 priorities: property management, parking, TIF facilitation, and downtown center. Connect downtown Johnson City, design and placemaking, special events and promotion. And then the marketing overlaps, marketing the district as a place to do a business, to start a business, to grow a business, the connection with the city's strategic plan on talent attraction is very important to both the JCDA and the Connect Downtown Johnson City Foundation. So, so we'll look at budgets. The goal, and Dave and the folks at Summit have offered to help Connect Downtown Johnson City look at look for funding sources. The current plan is to keep the staffing would still be under the JCDA. You need that. You have to have 2 employees to offer benefits and that type of thing. But the Connect Downtown group will work towards a plan to raise funds for 20% of their operation budget this next fiscal year. Any questions or comments about this?
I think it's all starting to look pretty clear, which feels really great considering where we were a few months ago. Looking a little more clear.
Yes, sir.
I have one observation that I want to just see if anyone has any thoughts on this. When I was looking at this slide deck and thinking about the objectives and soon to be specific SMART goals and steps that we'll all take, of course, I've been really excited to see this happen. I feel like it's gonna really help us put some guardrails on what we're doing, and that's great because there's so much potential. It's like really hard to stay focused, right? And then I also kind of like had this shift too in thinking, but also like what do we do when there are time-sensitive opportunities that come up that are kind of not really in the scope of this plan? And we feel like, geez Louise, like, as an example, not long ago, we approved some funding to do a preliminary study of the Ash Street Courthouse. And I don't exactly know where that fits into this plan. So, and maybe it does in some weird way that I haven't thought about, but in any case, I just wondered if there could be some way of staking out some space in our organization for creative responses to opportunities in the downtown or wherever. And putting guardrails on that even so that it doesn't become mission creep, but also we can accept some small amount of, you know, movement on interesting things that we should move on. So that's all I have to say. If no one cares about this, it's fine. It just occurred to me that if we are really rigid about this plan, we don't have as much opportunity to do anything else.
So Jody, I think what might happen is this plan that we're looking in front of us may be a temporary plan, but most communities, you'll find that their economic development, AKA JCDA, is completely separate from their Main Street program, AKA Connect Downtown JC. And so that if you did separate that, then that might allow for more bandwidth on the economic development side to address what you're asking for. But maybe right now, this is all we can handle, is keeping these organizations tied temporarily, but then the goal may be they are completely separate, just like they would in other communities.
That's a great point, Shannon. I totally agree.
So to clarify, when they're separated, which organization is the one that has the latitude or flexibility to take on new projects or get into some new business? Right.
I would think it would be the economic development side.
I'll also add, I think that's a bridge to cross once we get there,
Sure.
depending upon who has the bandwidth at that point.
You know, and I think we also just have to acknowledge why we built these guardrails, to use your term, which I think is appropriate. The organization had just gotten very spread out, and clearly we said a year ago we need to get refocused. And we've been downright ruthless about that for ourselves as board members, for the staff, everybody. We've just had to get downright, very focused about it. And I think it doesn't stop you from dealing with something else, but I think the group needs to take a vote on, hey, there's an opportunity over here. Is this something you want to pursue? And if you do, then I think you're off to the races and you go chase it down. But I think clearly we need to get a couple of things off our plate before we add too many more big things on it. So, and I think we're doing the right thing, but we should not limit ourselves to just this by any stretch.
But maybe, it kind of reminds me of, in my job, I have % of time allocated to various projects. When I want to start a new creative project, I have to justify where else in my FTE I'm going to not do something to my boss. Like, okay, so I'm not going to work on this project anymore. I'm going to go over here now. And it's very explicit. It may be that we want to, I don't know, state it explicitly somewhere that we're not taking on a new project unless we have the capacity to hand off something or back off on something, or we realize we're in a holding pattern on something and we have a little bandwidth. But that should be really explicit somewhere, I think.
Sorry, I was taking notes. Any other comments or anything like that that you want to share as a board? I really do appreciate your time today. I know all of y'all have full-time plus jobs, and that this 2.5 hours today is taking time away from that. So I do appreciate it. I will, Lindsay's been taking notes. I've been taking notes. We will go back and look at the goals and objectives and restate some of those, try and tweak some of them. And then I will send this slide deck out. It will be editable. You can, or maybe I'll do it in a Google Doc. So if you want to look at it, whatever, but please let me know. And like I said, we will start working. We have to submit a budget to the city next month, our budget request. So Jim and I will start working on this budget as well, and get with HR and our officers to look through that before we present it to the board as well.
Diana, I'd like to take just a quick minute and commend you and the staff on a fantastic session. This is awesome.
Thank you. I think Jim and Lindsay really sort of enjoyed helping develop the objectives and everything. It was a good, a good 2-hour time that we spent as a staff together on Monday working through this. Anything else?
I don't think so.
All right. Everyone go out. There's no more snow. I was going to say go enjoy the snow, but have a wonderful weekend. As soon as I get information back to LHP regarding the management agreement, and I'll run it through operations, we'll send it to legal. We will probably have to have a called meeting. And as soon as I know that, I will let you know so we can get, and Lindsay will have to get everything in the newspaper, public notice and everything. So, thank you
Thanks y'all so much.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Everybody.